The state rested its case after a tough day in the trial of Kyle Rittenhouse, the 18-year-old who's been charged with intentional homicide in the shooting deaths of two men during last summer's riots in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Today, a forensic pathologist gave testimony that Joseph Rosenbaum, one of the men killed that night, was reaching for Rittenhouse's rifle at the time he was shot. Watch.
Doctor, we talked about this hand wound and how that occurred. If someone is pointing a rifle at you, an AR-15, do you have an explanation of how that hand could be positioned that would result in the injury shown, and then also perhaps the injury to the thigh from that same round?
Well, as I said, this is a close range injury, so his hand is in close proximity or in contact with the end of that rifle.
Hand in contact with the rifle. Testimony seems to bolster the defense's claim that Kyle Rittenhouse was acting in self-defense when he shot and killed Rosenbaum. Joining me now is senior writer for townhall.com, Julio Rosas. Julio is in Kenosha, where the trial is taking place and following it day in and day out. Julio, thanks for being here, man. What are the biggest takeaways from the proceedings in court today?
I mean, you basically just played it. I mean, because there was a lot of testimony, especially from Richie McGinnis, who was right behind Joseph Rosenbaum when he was shot. And Richie said that he saw Rosenbaum lunging for the weapon right before Rittenhouse fired it. And so, that expert testimony just basically reinforced the fact that his hand was very close, if not touching the end of the rifle. And so that further bolsters Rittenhouse's claim of self-defense. And, of course, this was a prosecution witness. This was when the prosecution was still making their argument. And that has just been habitual throughout the entire court proceedings, where their own witnesses have basically undercut the prosecution's opening argument. And so right now, the defense is currently leading their arguments.
Earlier in the week, there was that clip that went viral of one of the, again, prosecution's witnesses saying that he was shot while he was effectively in the process of assaulting Rittenhouse. This was the individual shot in the arm who survived. Was that still the single biggest moment, would you say, in Rittenhouse's defense's favor so far?
Yeah, absolutely. So Gage Grosskreutz, he did agree with the defense that Rittenhouse did not shoot him until after, because initially Grosskreutz had his hands in the air, but then he dropped it and he had a handgun, and he approached Rittenhouse with the gun and started to point it at his head, and that's when Rittenhouse shot him. And Grosskreutz agreed with the defense with that, and that just completely, again, just bolstered Rittenhouse's claim to self-defense.
The judge actually dismissed, Julio, one of the charges today, that of violating the curfew. Can you tell us how did that go down? What happened?
It was quite simple. It was just the fact that the prosecution didn't even make any arguments about Rittenhouse violating curfew. And of course, everyone out in the crowd, including myself, who was out there that night, were in violation of that curfew. And so the prosecution didn't. I guess it looked like it kind of was an oversight on their behalf, because that's literally one of the easiest charges that they can prove, that he was out past, but they didn't bring any witnesses. They didn't make any evidence towards that. And so after they rested their case, the defense said, well, hey, they didn't even make any arguments to that. And so the judge said, okay, that's right. And so that's why he dismissed it.